Episode 169 of Who Should You Choose, the video series where I go through the prior videos, questions, and comments and help you with your hot line of decisions. We are marching forward towards NHL 26, and at the time of this recording, I think we're like 24 days away from the early access launch of 26. So, get a lot of questions about when we're going to start hearing more things. Honestly, given the month back of the release date and the fact that we just heard about it on August 4th, like with the cover reveal and all of that, I expect like Monday, Wednesday, and Friday potentially to hear stuff pretty much every week. And it's going to be small. On the weekend, saw some awesome stuff with Sergei Fedorov being announced. If you didn't see all of that info, I have a video going over all the new Hut stuff, as well as the chemistry and salary cap. We got our first look at it. So in this video, I just kind of want to discuss on what your guys' thoughts are when it comes to those two things. So the first thing is salary cap. My man Kesso, if you don't know who Kesso is, he was a co-host of my podcast for years ago when we started Coffee and Shell. He was one of the better players, a little bit older as well, but also was like a kind of a big nerd like the rest of us when it comes to the game. And he had been banging the drum for a salary cap in Hut Champs specifically. And the reason for that is Champs, it is the hyper competitive. It is for the top 1%. And having a mode where you've got to have the best players, but you also have a limiter so that you can't just have people, coming in with all of the best cards. Now, again, there's an argument to that as well. It is Ultimate Team, which I'll get into, but I think there was a play for it to be in Hut Champs. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Now, my big concern is if the salary cap is in all modes. One of the things that I'm seeing in all the comments on that video is it's Ultimate Team. I don't want to have to worry about a salary cap too. And for the hardcore player base, that is a big concern of mine. If it is restricting and we can't go out and build our best teams, like there's a lot of players that can't play a ton. They don't put money into the game. They don't play a ton. And I think the salary cap will help them to an extent because what's going to end up happening is the first month of the game, no one's going to know. It is going to be fresh. The chemistry system, no, it's a lot like what happened with content in the beginning of last year. So if you remember, there was a massive change to HUD content, a massive change. Wasn't all great. A lot of it was bad, but we had no idea. For example, we received like a quarter of the rewards and it made every card 10x in price. Silver cards were going for 5,000 coins, right? And there's an argument if that was good or bad. I think obviously it ended up being not well received, but I actually didn't mind it because I realized it early on. You just sell every card that you get in a pack and you didn't get many packs, but any card was worth coins, a lot of them, more than they've ever been. And then I just bought every Master Set player I wanted to try out. And like, I remember that Team of the Week Fantilli that came out, all that stuff. I would just be able to buy those cards. And then obviously it didn't turn out good as the game went along. But just as an example, it was far different. I think in the first month, no one's going to have any idea. It's going to be very fresh. You're going to see multiple different lineup builds and combos. The salary cap is going to be interesting to see how people can manipulate it if it isn't every mode. And the AP boost as well. I think one thing that I am excited about with the chemistry boost is it's not just overalls getting increased. So if you haven't seen it, essentially, if you have like 3 Anaheim Ducks on your first line, that line gets +2 overall. Okay? It doesn't look like it's team-based, which I think is a massive mistake. Like, if you have 6 Anaheim Ducks, they all go up by +4. That isn't the case. It doesn't look like. It looks like there's a threshold to hit, and then the next line, it has to work. But again, we'll have more info on that once we see more. But that being said, there's also listed by nationality, and it also looks like events as well. But on top of the overall increase, if you get enough or you hit enough of these chemistry boosts, it looks like you'll get salary cap relief. So if you have a lot of cards in your team and you have a lot of boosts, you might get like +6 million to the cap, which allows you to throw base Connor McDavid into a build where you're already getting all these other boosts, right? You see what I'm saying? So it stacks kind of. On top of that, it looks like another type of boost is AP points. Now, early on, X Factor abilities matter more than ever because everyone's overalls are so low. And outside of the cards that have good agility and good speed, they're very similar in feel. Now, if you can get an extra ability point, that's massive. So I think there's going to be a lot of interesting builds before everyone figures it out. My fear is everyone figures it out. It is the online era, live service. I will have a ton of videos breaking down like here are the optimal ways to, just because again, that's the nature of gaming now. Everyone wants the path of least resistance. They want the most amount of knowledge in a short amount of time. That will get figured out, I think. So that'll be very interesting to see from that standpoint. The salary cap, I don't know how I feel about it because anytime you add friction points to the game, it adds a lot of immersion to the top end portion of the player base. But again, I talk about this a ton. It's the casual players that drive the success of the game, right? So even not even the success, the amount of players that are in the matchmaking pool, all of it. The more players playing, the better experience for all. And my fear is with the salary cap in place, there's gonna be these like you got another restrictor, but you've got these cards that are going to come in and it's like, okay, getting 3 of the Edmonton Oilers is going to be just super overpowering and no one else can do it because they haven't spent money on the game. It's going to be very interesting to see how, they handle that. And I'm very interested. I am excited from a team building aspect because I don't think we've had a shakeup like this since way back when the early years of HUT, when you could change the player's team, which I think was dumb. So like, if you had two Carolina Hurricanes and you're like, oh, I have Wayne Gretzky too, but I also want the chemistry boost, so I can change his team to Carolina to make him, fit in like that is dumb. I hate that, but you know, adding the chemistry back in, a lot of people had said this would allow for a lot more team building, and I'm excited to see. My hope is that for theme teams you get a big boost. The one thing that it looks like it's line by line, which I think is a miss. If I have an entire team of Sharks at launch of the game, and if you have 20 Sharks on your roster, and you get a +5 to all of those players, all of a sudden that base card Sharks team is usable. Like that's what I want to see. But it does look like this is the early introduction for it, and it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So I would assume the other thing is with ability points. It looks like X Factors, they mentioned this in the press release, that X Factors are getting redone. I'm very curious to see because I think that done right, X Factors are the differentiator until we get custom strides, until we get custom shots. X Factors are the differentiator, whether you like them or don't. There's a lot of abilities that I'm not a big fan of. But you have to admit that it is the only thing that makes cards feel different. It is. There is no other limiting factor. Like, obviously, if a card's bigger in terms of size and skating, right? Outside of that, it could be a blank card, and they all feel roughly the same. X Factor abilities, especially early on at launch, give each card, like, some crazy differentiator that I really do enjoy. So, there's a lot going on in NHL 26 for HUT that I'm excited about. I don't have a lot of faith that'll be executed well, especially early on. I don't, because there's no feedback for it. Just like with the XP path and all that stuff, they just did it, and we had to like test it. The chemistry system is going to be very similar because it's going to be figured out very quickly, and when it is, we'll see how then we adjust to it. So, anyways, let's get into some of the most, most like comments. Vazzy, I talked about him in the last video. Much appreciated for the kind word, man. Love the series. If you aren't following Vazzy and you are a franchise player, what a miss. Especially with Be a Pro now getting a redo. You're going to want to have Be a Pro series that has the best rosters. Vazzy makes the best rosters, in my opinion, currently. So make sure you give him a follow. You can just click on his comment on the last video. Trobot says, reflecting on NHL 25. The hits, fantasy, making the players you want, every team represented. Can't disagree. I think that is the fantasy event was awesome. I've talked about this a lot. The only way to make it better is if it goes true to fantasy. When you play fantasy hockey, it's not just goals that count. Assists, hits, blocks, penalty minutes, all that stuff counts. I would love to see fantasy cards that increase in overall based on other stats. I think that makes way more immersion. It allows for way more cards to be released, right? Like so many more cards to be released. Obviously, there's going to be a danger in doing a card for hits And like I said, Kiefer Sherwood's a perfect example. He has like 5,000 hits. So you would have to make it where every 10 hits, you get an over one overall, something like that. But I agree completely. Fantasy was awesome. The World Junior event was perfect. I hope with the inclusion of James Haggins, it is very clear that they are going to players with NIL deals. So name, image, likeness. EA goes to, just like college football, they're going to those players and saying, hey, we'll pay you for your likeness in game. I'm hoping that means when the World Juniors come around, it is going to be unbelievable if they can finally do something with the U.S. team. If you go back historically, the only U.S. players that they can show off or have in an event are CHLers, essentially. So players that play in the CHL. Kerry Terrence, for example, played for the, oh man, it's been an off season. The Erie Otters. And so he was available, and he was like their best player that was available to them. Obviously, he was like a fourth liner, right? So I'm hoping that they pay for at least the big ones, right? So it would be, oh man, I'm trying to think. I'm assuming Gabe Perreault graduated, but Haggins would be one. He's definitely going to be on there, and I would assume they have his name, image, and likeness from this year. That I don't know if they have to redo the deal or if it's just like, hey, we can use you in Hut. I don't know. Play how you want. Yes, I don't have to play online. I hated committing 20 minutes to finish a game that I know I'll lose the first time the goal is scored. Interesting take here because I think it was play how you want until they reintroduced those objective paths. But the reason why they introduced those objective paths was because there was so little rewards. There just was. Like, remember when launch of the game happened, it was just the XP path. And I talk about this a lot. Rewards were abysmal. It was terrifying. It looked like we weren't ever going to be able to get any packs, right? All you had was the garbage ones that were in the XP path. And because they didn't test the XP path, it was just terrible. And we were playing the game, but I didn't have to play online. That was the one thing. It's like, okay, there's nothing, but the small things I can work towards, I can do whatever I want. Then they reintroduced the objective paths, which was necessary for rewards, right? But you take away that play the way you want if you want all the rewards, right? So, but I do think there was that level of it. Wild card. I love the first goal wins, trying out event cards, even found out I like playing online. Wild card was a big win for offline players. It really was. Like, I think what myself and other people that said they wanted a draft champ style mode, we wanted online competitive. And again, that's just such a small portion of the player base. I think there is a way to have wildcard perform like that. If you play online, I think, for example, you should just match up with players that have the same amount of win totals, right? So you start at, you know what I mean? Like the one thing about MLB's Battle Royale BR, which is the best in terms of this format of the mode, is you have to redo your lineup like every time you lose twice. You lose twice, you're out, you got to restart at the beginning, and then the goal is to get to 10 wins before losing twice, right? But you've got to do a draft every single time. And wildcard, they don't have that capability or they don't want to. You just draft the lineup for that wildcard, and then that's it. So, for offline players, it was amazing, though, because you could try online. There's no damage to playing online. Now, early on, wildcard was terrible because they didn't give us enough event items. As we went along, they basically allowed us to use all the master set player items. That's what I want to see. I want to see all. If wildcard is not going to be used for an online competitive format, it's not. Wildcard is slightly above squad battles for an offline player, and myself included. And again, I'm not saying that we are the ones that you need to cater to. I'm just saying that is the reality. If you are not someone who likes playing offline, if you're an online only player, competitive, wildcard is just slightly more interactive and interesting and a little bit more fun than squad battles. But outside of that, wildcard is good for those other players that just want to try online. The first goal wins was quick. Mascots, man. Get rid of it. I'm sure there'll be people that'll be upset by it. Any change you make will have people upset by it. The amount of people that they piss off by putting mascots in is 10x the amount that are like, I like playing with mascots. It just, the game is so arcadey. I think they're trying to cater to a younger audience, which is a far weaker audience in terms of the amount of people in their overall player base. It is far older. It's crazy the amount of, but at a certain point, lean into what you're good at. Like older players, I really don't think. Now, there's some players out there, I get comments where it's like, I like playing with my son or my kiddo, and they like mascots. It's fun, stupid, whatever. It's not competitive at all. Totally understand that. I question whether if you enjoy mascots, is your main focus playing online? Because if not, then make mascots only an offline mode in wildcard, right? Like it would be surprising to me to find someone that likes the wildcard week that enjoys playing online more than offline. That's what I'm trying to get across. The misses, not enough cards. My man Maisel did a tally. We're about 2,500 cards below the total of NHL 24 and NHL 23 and 22, which is crazy because those had 5-day a week. 22 and halfway through 23 had the 5-day a week content cycle. So 2,500 cards is a ton. We did not get nearly enough cards because there's 32 franchises, right? Unless you're regularly giving out cards for every team, it's just very difficult. And it would be different if those cards upgraded and you could use them all year. The problem is that, okay, there's 32 teams. You give out a card for an event, and then you don't see any other cards for that team for like 2 months or that are substantial. And it's like, okay, that card's now no longer usable. You've now lost a card for that team, and you're not putting new cards in, right? So, like, Vancouver Canucks fans, my goodness, you guys got crushed this year. So I agree with that. There needs to be a way of, I don't think more cards is necessarily needed, but an even dispersing of cards is necessary. That needs to be a focus. Now, the other thing, I lost my train of thought again. Man, doing these in the morning is tough. When it comes to the not enough cards, I will argue anyone that this year's cards released are the most usable they have ever been. One of the biggest arguments and complaints I had about content in prior years, before this new content team, but really before NHL 25, was that they would release more cards, 2,500. When they would do a release, Team of the Week, for example, there's 2 cards that maybe could make your team if you were someone that played regularly. And even if you weren't, there was cards that were 81 overalls in April, right? Because they just did basically like +2 to whatever their highest card is. So if some CHLer got it, right? Like we're looking at like 83 overalls in March. Just not usable unless you were just playing offline. And again, there's offline players that can use that. But even in squad battles, it's difficult for a lot of players to use cards that are that low. So you can argue that the content wasn't engaging, wasn't very fun. It was far more usable. The most usable it's ever been, because even the lowest overall from an event, let's take this one for example, it's 93 overall. A 93 overall can go in your team. And yes, there's 99s and all of that. I understand, but it isn't an 84. Like a 93 is somewhat usable, and especially for players that just want to pick up the game in the summertime and play, right? Far more usable. It's the most usable it's ever been. I think that's a positive that gets overlooked by a lot of people, that this year's content was far more usable. Team of the Year cards not having 9 points for Synergies. In 24, we had the choice of 9 categories. We chose 3. We each got 3 points. So, I think one of the bigger issues with Team of the Year and Team of the Season is that they didn't get upgraded. And that's fine if that's the standard. So, but then you have to understand from the content side of things, if you're going to release these cards, if they are going to be an end-all be-all event, which I think they tried to diminish so that you didn't just save all your stuff for Team of the Year. So I understand it from that point. They wanted to make, I hated Team of the Year in the sense that everyone just saved for 2 months, got these 6 cards, and then it's like, these cards aren't upgrading. I hate this. This is awful. And it's like, you just lock 6 cards in your lineup. If that's the way you want to play, awesome. Like, I understand. But, like, I just hated that. It was so boring. It was so figured out, right? It was so figured out. I think that if you're going to take away from guaranteed regular upgrades from Team of the Year cards, they need +3 to Synergies so that they can activate a Synergy by themselves. That gives them a massive added bonus, because if you're going to have events that give out free X Factor abilities, then they lose a lot more of their value, because Team of the Year cards also had free X Factor abilities. So 100%, I think the Synergy thing is massively missed. This is what killed team builders as well. team builders were essentially very expensive master set player items. I went back and looked midway through the year. There was a Robin Regeer card, I think, in NHL 24, and I looked at it, and it came out in January or December. And I looked at it and it was like very mid, like in terms of the attributes. But then I went and looked at how easy it was to activate synergies, and they had multiple on them. And it was like, it turned him into an animal. And I think that when you go and look at synergies, because there's so few of them on team builders, because they're just viewed as these are 86s. You don't get another synergy until 91 or whatever. Get rid of that. Allow multiple synergies on some of the more those year-long cards, and it can make up for the lack of upgrades. So just something to keep in. The worst, I just want to skim through this. So team of the year, team of the season, power up, X Factor not getting upgraded, not being worth obtaining. Again, I think this was, when you compare it year over year, awful. But I think that it is now just the new norm. We're getting a change. We need to now understand that they do not have it as a prerequisite that they are going to upgrade. So you need to take that into account when it comes to buying these cards, if they're even in the game now. Team builders not being good. As soon as the very next one dropped, huge cost, no advantage in making them. The 92 value set to make 99s, a slap in the face for all investors. Yeah, I love that it allowed players to make it the 99s very easily. Massive, like, they spit on every year-long hardcore player this year, because they I'm going to use this term a lot. They rug pulled, where it's like, I've got this new thing. It's the same type of card that we've had for the last 4 years. Bang, rug pulled. That's not how they work now. And it's like, if you could have just addressed some of those things, it would save a lot of frustration. But again, for the 90% of the player base that doesn't play all year, these were great. So the worst, devaluing my collection. Turn in 86, plus 88, plus 90. 89 is only being worth an 88. Bring back the collectible format from 23, where every overall had a value. Do not mess around with this nonsense. I hate, this was one of the biggest steps backwards from the year, and it's not close, for sure. Hours trading in fodder to make 86s, to trade in the event fodder. Every level should have a value, make collectibles. NHL 24 was near perfect how to do content. If they added fantasy events, warp speed, gallery of greats, I would have been thrilled. 100%. I miss power up collectibles. So funny, because that was such a boring way to do things. But in the current system of what they have available, 100% the best. All right, this one was one of the more video comments, so I'm gonna include this one. Hey, I'm 52 and continue to play NHL games. I remember playing at ice hockey when I was on the Sega Genesis. If I remember, for so many years, the NHL face-off games are better than EA NHL games anyway. Yes, Generation X continue to play NHL. I've seen some numbers, fellas. Far and away, 25 to 40, biggest demographic of the NHL player base. And from a business standpoint, obviously, you look at the weakest, or a place of, hey, we could introduce this audience. This would boost up sales and boost up engagement if we can get younger players into the game more. Totally understand that. I just think that there's so much catering to that year over year, and they're not just leaning into their target audience. And again, I'm not a business guy. That might not be the right way to do it from a sales standpoint, but good Lord, it's very arcadey, and the old guys want simulation closer to that, and I just think that we're getting away from that. Great discussion today, guys. I only got to a few comments, but some of them I really enjoy. So let me know what you think about the chemistry system and the salary cap in NHL 26. Again, if you haven't seen info on that, go back and watch the video. And we'll be back tomorrow. And I'd love to hear your questions and comments. Have a good one, fellas.